Last week was the last message for 2015, which was message number 422. Tonight is the first message for 2016, message number 423. And on that note, and we'll have more about this later, I just want to say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We're going to start out with a pastoral speech. I don't know how long it'll take. And then we'll reopen with music in the night's message. This will be the second time I've given a pastoral speech in 7 years. This is not your average church. It's a privilege and an honor to be in the chapel and in the presence of God and the teaching of His Word. Being a closed service with only certain people allowed, attitude is doubly important. Now, in the book of Matthew, don't go there, I'm just going to be paraphrasing. In the book of Matthew, in chapter 18, it says that what is bound on earth is bound in heaven, and what is loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. Then it goes into verse 19 where it says, where two should agree on anything, and this is the basis of our number 2 being the adequate witness, where two shall agree on anything that they shall ask, that shall be done by my Father which is in heaven. And then focus in. Verse 20. It says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am in the midst of them. There's certainly more than 2 or 3 of us here. And I don't want to sound like a southern preacher, but is God here today?
Yes, sir.
Is God here today?
Yes, sir.
Act like it. I know that there are at least 2 or 3 of you here that have physical problems, back problems, hip problems, arthritis, and you're given a certain dispensation. When the service starts, at least try to sit up at attention as long as you can to show respect for God, not for me, for God's presence here. After all, if you do that, that is faith action. You just might get healed. It's respect for God, who made it all and sent His Son to die for us, to set us free. That's whose presence we're in. Now, those at home, on the net, same applies. You may be in your PJs. You may be eating something. But focus your attention on what's being said. All those in here and out there, please go to the bathroom before service. Now, if you have a problem maintaining, in spite of that, God knows. God reads your heart. But don't be cocky or cavalier or lackadaisical about the things of God. Do we understand each other?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
I still can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
Now, last week it started with arriving to church on time. The staff and the musicians are to arrive at a certain time and the congregants at another time. And tonight's pastoral speech was an inevitable follow-up to that. Ladies who aren't early risers, decide what you're going to wear the night before so you don't get delayed by that. In bad weather, or if the weather's bad, right now it's below freezing. Start earlier. Scrape the ice off your vehicle so you can get here on time. Now, if I'm not talking to you, just throw it over your shoulder. If the shoe fits, then you damn well wear it. It's a whole attitude of devoting a couple of hours out of 170 hours in your week to God. Now, we just taught recently, you put God first, and He'll take care of the rest. Now, let's have our regular opening and count us down live.
5, 4, 3.
If God be for us, who can be against us? Who can separate us from His mighty hand? If God be for us, who can be against us? We're gonna win this battle if for God we stand. Goliath stood boldly, defying God's army. There stood little David, but did not stand alone. He said, "In the name of the Lord I come against thee." While he stood there crying with a sling and a stone. If God be for us, who can be against us? Who can separate us from His mighty hand? If God be for us, who can be against us? We're gonna win this battle if for God we stand. The lions were roaring so fierce and hungry, but Daniel knew the one he served was gonna bring him out. A king cried, "Oh Daniel, has your God delivered thee?" He replied, "My Lord has shut the lion's mouth." If God be for us, who can be against us? Who can separate us from His mighty hand? If God be for us, who can be against us? We're gonna win this battle if for God we stand. We're gonna win this battle if for God we stand. In shady green paths Some come through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives us song. In the night season and all the day long. Though sorrows befall us and Satan oppose, God leads his dear children along. Through faith we can conquer, defeat all our foes. God leads his dear children along. Some through the water, some through the flood. Some come through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives us song. In the night season and all the day long. In the night season and all the day long.
Okay, thank you guys. You can take your seats now. We're going to start out tonight by talking about some current events. Get ready to be shocked if you don't know this already. ISIS just published a booklet on rape based on Quranic teaching and laws. It describes, and I'm not going to go into it, I've heard it, the description. It describes when and how you can rape the wife and children of your captives. Islam, Muslims are one of a kind. Freedom of religion. Where's the women's champion Hillary on this? Where are the women's rights groups on this? Where are the feminists on this? All these horrible things caused or done by one religion. Christian preachers don't tell you to go out and blow somebody up because they won't become a Christian. Jewish rabbis don't tell you to go and blow somebody up because they won't become Jews. Or, in both cases, put out a booklet on how to rape women and children. Only one religion does this, and they are at war with the world. If we had a real man as a commander-in-chief who would let the military handle this, it'd be over in a matter of days, not years. Putin could end it in a matter of minutes with a nuke or two. Subhumans who rape as part and parcel of their program, need to be destroyed, not brought to justice. Indeed, the only justice I can think of would be to rape them to death. And we don't do that. You start a fight with us, and we're going to finish it. That's what I have to say on current events. Now, tonight's message is going to be on God talks to us in many ways. Some of the ways he talks to us we're going to cover tonight. And as a starting point, I'm going to reference the book of Hebrews, first chapter. You don't need to go there. You can go there if you want. I'm just going to paraphrase what it says in the beginning of that. Hebrews 1 starts out by saying that God in times past spake to us in diverse manners. Emphasis on diverse manners. He still does. Sometimes he speaks directly. Maybe not to you or to me. Some people would have you think he does. Sometimes he speaks directly. Like in the Old Testament, where it says, the Lord said unto Moses, or Elijah, or Isaiah, or Jeremiah, or Ezekiel, do or don't do thus and so, directly, and through them by the written word to us. God also speaks to us in numbers. We've taught this several times. Not the I Ching, but biblical numerology, and you should jot them down if you don't have them already. Number one, we're talking about whole numbers. Number one is indivisible, so don't give me 0.5 or 0.97. 1. The number 1 is indivisible. It stands for God. 2 stands for the adequate witness. We just went over that tonight in Matthew 18, where we cited it. 3 stands for divine manifestation. Sometimes the Holy Trinity, 3 in 1. 4 means covering the whole earth. 5 is the number of grace. For example, when God led the Hebrews out from Pharaoh's bondage, 2.25 million people came out in groups of 5, repeating God's grace, grace, grace. 6 stands for human effort. It's also the number of a man. And indeed, the Antichrist and the devil's number is a multiple of 6. 6, 6, 6. 7 means completion, or something that's perfectly completed. Why are we going through this? Because God talks to us in many ways, including through numbers. When you see certain numbers, you take a second look and see if he's saying something to you. 8, new beginnings. Most people don't know this, but Christ has a number. His number is 888. New beginnings, new beginnings, new beginnings. 9 stands for divine manifestation multiplied, 3 times 3. 10 stands for human responsibility. There are things that you have to do or you should do. 11 stands for chaos or disorder. 12 stands for perfect government. 13 stands for apostasy or being against God. And then we jump to a couple of bigger numbers and we'll be done with this part. The number 40 stands for testing. He was 40 days and nights in the wilderness. Or God's people, they were 40 years out in the wilderness. It's the number of testing. 50 is the number of harvest or jubilees. Sometimes God talks to us in colors. Purple represents the king. Scarlet represents the suffering servant. White represents the perfect servant. Blue represents the eternal nature. He speaks to us in metals and symbols. Brass equals judgment. Silver equals redemption. Gold equals God. He speaks to us in directions. And if you have a tablet or notebook, you should write 2 columns. Towards God, away from God. Up is towards God. Down is away from God. And you'll find these directions in structures that are in the Bible, in Scripture that's in the Bible. In is towards God. Out is away from God. Contraction, which is another way of saying in, is towards God. And expansion, another way of saying out, is away from God. Right, the direction right is towards God. Left is away from God. You know what the word for left is in Latin? Any doctors in the house? Sinister. Your eyes are, the right eye is ocular dexter and the left eye is ocular sinister. So left is away from God. North is towards God. South, away from God. West, towards God. East, away from God. And speaking of directions and dimensions, he speaks to us in his word in stone, which is the Great Pyramid in Egypt, that's filled with all of this that we've mentioned so far, symbolizing his word and his plan. Yet scholars, experts, scientists, archaeologists are continually searching and searching and searching in the pyramid for information and knowledge, and they're walking on it. His word is in the stars and the very heavens above us. Not the profane zodiac that Satan stole. It does contain certain truths, but God's zodiac that shows his plan for the ages, all the way from Virgo and the seed of the woman to the seed of Satan, always at war, all the way until Leo, the lion of the tribe of Judah, comes in victory. That's all up there, God talking to us. and the stars. But he also talks through us through his names and his ways. This is what he does or what he doesn't do, based on the aspects of his names and the way and his ways, how he does things. All this and more. Sometimes directly, as I said a while back. Sometimes he talks to us through angels, like he did to Gideon. The angel came and said, "The Lord is with thee, the one who's mighty in valor." Or in Daniel, where Gabriel comes and talks to him, telling him, "God heard your prayer, and he sent me to answer his prayer." And most recently, last week, we taught through Lot that God sent angels to talk to Lot. Sometimes he teaches us, or talks, and teaches. He talks to us through dreams and visions, like he did with Daniel and the visions that Daniel had and others. And sometimes when he talks to us, it hits us like a flash of lightning. Most of the time, it's that still, small voice. Sometimes heard, sometimes just an impression or a feeling, a thought in your mind, a feeling in your heart or spirit, or an urge, that still small voice. I want you to go with me in the Old Testament to the first book of Kings, chapter 19. Story of Elijah, where there's wind and a storm and an earthquake and a fire. First Kings. '19. Let's start out at interesting. Let's start in verse 8 just to show you something. Talking about Elijah. And he arose and did eat and drink and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights. What did we just say 40 means? Number of testing. Went to Horeb, the mount of God. In verse 10 it says, and he said, I've been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. God said, go forth and stand on the mountain. Elijah went and stood on the mountain. Halfway through verse 11, and a great and strong wind rent, that means tore, the mountains and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire. The Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, put a little circle on after. After the fire, a still small voice. And it was so when Elijah heard it, a still small voice. And he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entering of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he repeats himself. He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts because of the children of Israel, how they've forsaken everything, which I just told you. And then he says, even I only am left. And they seek my life to take it away. Then God tells him about halfway through verse 16, he says, Elisha. Now we're talking about Elijah. Now he's saying, Elisha, the son of Shaphat and Abel Melola, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room. Elisha is going to take Elijah's place. And just in response to what he said, I'm the only one. Am I the only one? And I had the honor of being able to repeat this teaching to Dr. Scott when he asked me once, when he said, Buddy, do you think they get it? Do you think the people get it? Verse 18, in response to him saying, I'm the only one that's left. Verse 18, yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. In verse 19, the end of it, it says, And Elijah passed by him, Elisha, and cast his mantle upon him. This is before he was taken up in the whirlwind, which I think I taught you last week in the raptures, and his mantle came fluttering down and landed on Elisha. He didn't talk to Elijah through that horribly strong wind, through the earthquake, through the fire, but through that still, small voice, with which I think he speaks to most of us. In the movie The Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston playing Moses says God was talking to him. They said, "Do you mean you heard his voice? He talked to you?" And he said, "He put his thoughts in my mind," is what he says. That's still small voice. God talks to you through his domata. Domata are his gift ministers. Go with me to the New Testament, to the book of Ephesians. I may have a little trouble reading this because my Ephesians is so marked up, I can hardly see it. Ephesians chapter 4. We're going to start out in chapter 8, or rather verse 8, which says, Wherefore he, Jesus they're talking about, saith, when he ascended up on high, he led captivity captive, and gave gifts unto men. Gifts is translating the Greek word doma, which can be transliterated domata, which means his gift ministers. Gave his gift ministers unto men. It goes on in verse 9 to say, Now that he ascended, that is, what is it but he also descended first into the lower parts of the earth? He that descended is the same also that ascended up far above heavens, that he might fulfill all things. That means He's in charge. And then it says, he gave, and in the King James it says some apostles. It doesn't say some in any of these. It's using the definite article, the. It says, and he gave the apostles and the prophets and the evangelists and the pastors and teachers. And that's really a hyphenated word, pastoring teachers or teaching pastors, is a domata, that he also speaks to you through. Now, if we have time, we've taken a lot of time already. I'd like to go to a very strange story. You want to do that? Should we take time to do it?
Yes, sir.
It's in 1 Samuel. And for some reason, it makes me think of Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Sword of Shannara. 1 Samuel. Give me a show of hands when you get there, because this is really strange. We're going to start out in the beginning. There's something I want to establish here. It says, it came to pass in chapter 28. Did I tell you that? Chapter 28. It came to pass in those days the Philistines gathered their armies together for warfare to fight with Israel. David's there. The king Saul is there. Philistines are gathering to fight with him. Go to verse 3. Even though it's called the book of Samuel, something very important here. What's those first four words? It says, now Samuel was dead. All right? File that away. Now Samuel was dead. And the end of that same verse, it says, and Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Meanwhile, the Philistines are gathered and pitched together, getting ready to attack Saul and David. Verse 5 says, when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. And when Saul inquired of the Lord, what did the Lord say? The Lord answered him not, neither by dreams nor by Urim. We taught on this before. There was two devices, a Urim and a Thummim, that the high priest wore inside his breastplate while he was officiating in the tabernacle, by which he communicated with God. Some people speculate it had 12 jewels for the 12 tribes of Israel, and it lit up giving answers to questions of God. But what we're getting here is a confirmation. It said he didn't talk to him, neither by dreams nor by Urim. That means he can answer him by Urim, nor by prophets. So God wouldn't talk to him. Saul said unto his servants, find me a woman with a familiar spirit. Why a woman, not a man, I don't know, but find me a woman with a familiar spirit. And they went and looked, and they found one. There is a woman with a familiar spirit at Endor. This is a story of the witch at Endor. That's why I said it sounds like Star Wars. Hath a familiar spirit at Endor. And the king, Saul, disguised himself. Remember, he's the king. He's the one that got rid of all the familiar spirits and wizards. Disguised himself, put on other raiment, and he went, took a couple guys with him, They came to this woman by night, so they're doing it sneakily. And he said to this woman, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me him up whom I shall name unto thee. She said to him, amongst other things, you know how he's cut off those that have Saul. She doesn't know he's Saul yet. Saul has cut off those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, as the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to me for this thing. Then the woman said, whom shall I bring up? And he said, bring me up Samuel. Now remember, verse 3, now Samuel was dead. He said, bring me up Samuel. Verse 12, when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. The woman spake to Saul, saying, why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And the king said unto her, be not afraid. She asked what she saw. She said she saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, because he asked for Samuel, what form is he of? And she said, an old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. What does Samuel do? Verse 15. Samuel said to Saul, why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? Why are you bothering me? This is strange. Why are you bothering me and bring me up here? Disquieted, I guess that would mean it's nice and peaceful and quiet where he was. Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? Saul answered, said, I'm sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. This time it doesn't say Urim, but we already know, not by Urim either. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make known to me what I shall do, because he's on the other side. Then said Samuel, wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee, and is become thine enemy? And the Lord hath done to him as he spake by me. For the Lord hath rent the kingdom out of thine hand. God's torn it out of Saul's hand and given it to David. Now, that's because Saul did something that God told him not to do, but that's not the point of the message tonight. It's showing you all the different and some even strange ways that God talks. The witch at Endor calling up Samuel. Yes, he talks to us in many ways. Listen. Learn to listen. It'll build your trust, and the trust will build your faith. And when you act in faith, that's what he's looking for. Listen to him. And that's my message tonight. And it's offering time. Just a reminder, it is January. This is First Fruits Month. Everybody is supposed to be giving extra offerings above their tithes and offerings as first fruits to God. To get that angel to go out in front of you and to keep diseases from you and keep sickness from you for the coming year. For the offertory, we're going to have precious memories. And then I have a few closing statements to make.
Precious memories, how they linger, how they ever flood my soul. In the stillness of the midnight, precious sacred seeds unfold. As I travel down life's pathway, know not what the years may hold. As I ponder, hope grows fonder. Precious memories flood my soul. Precious memories, how they linger, how they ever flood my soul. In the stillness of the midnight, precious sacred seeds unfold. Precious memories, how they linger, how they ever flood my soul. In the stillness of the midnight, precious sacred seeds unfold. In the stillness of the midnight, precious sacred seeds unfold.
Now, since this is the first message of the year and this is the New Year's weekend, I would like to greet and thank and single out certain ones in my congregation. Those of you that are in here are pre-included. I'm talking about those that are out there. I want to say and give a shout out and say hello and Happy New Year to Zach and Jim and David in North Carolina, to Cade in North Carolina, to Daniel and David in Pennsylvania, to Honey in Las Vegas, to Joyce and Twyla and Adrian in Desert Hot Springs, California, to Dylan in Cathedral City, California, to Jason in Los Angeles, to Bluezette in Blackfoot, to Rachel and Buck in Vancouver, to Darlene in Claremont, Twyla in Desert Hot Springs, to Vincenzo in Arizona, to Kevin in Ireland, to Kelsey in San Diego, And to Janelle in Southern California, to all of you, Happy New Year, and to keep on walking in faith, all anxiety.